Yeah,
Yeah.
I forgot that I'd pressed that, and last time I accidentally said a bunch of things that I really hope that the students that I know are aware of this YouTube channel do not, make a montage of. Let's just put it like that. Like I could.
Oh, that'd be good times, wouldn't it?
Only human.
No.
Only human. So it sounded like from the guild, like we're going to be joined by Adam pretty soon here, who's wondering where we were at, and yeah,
Okay.
I think I've got everything down here. Just so you know, Trent, when I'm not meaning to be like kind of radio silence for about 15 minutes before we get started. I'm just like trying to type everything up and get it all like formatted and submitted onto YouTube, because before we press record, I try to have like the episode breakdown kind of completed, and that just involves a little bit. I usually am working for about 15 minutes or so before we start every episode.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're the star of this one, Trent. So hopefully you've been lubricating those vocal cords.
Maybe we'll find out.
It'd be like
And
short
was that
episode.
game of-
It'd be like how was Gen Con, Trent? He's like, it was shit.
Oh. Andy, red light. Come on, man.
Meh.
Yeah, or he's just like, good, had fun, loved it.
Yep.
Cool. Are we done?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you play the Climbers today?
Yeah, with
Or
my
was that
kids.
okay? Cool. I didn't know how recent that one was. Yeah, the Wrath.
Yeah, I was playing
It's
with
the
my
Wrath
kids today.
of Gen
We played 2 games of it, and the first one was kind of like they didn't really know what they were doing. The second one, my son clearly got it.
Nice.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I like that name
Sounds
so
like
much.
one of those robots
but
they
I'm
use
sorry,
to keep telling
Adam.
doctors busy.
They say a great artist steals. Well, I'm stealing. Wrath of Gen Con. All right. Now that I've happily stolen that. Ooh, and I did have a little bit of something else written up. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but some of the like I made little thumbnails, kind of clickbait looking thumbnails for some of the videos. And I tried to pass them by my little brother, who like actually follows like people who are just YouTubers. Like that's like all they do is just like get in front of a video and like YouTube. And I guess to a certain extent, maybe that's us too. But like my little brother actually has like 2-3 YouTubers that he follows. And I was like, Will, tell me, does this look clickbaity enough for you? As like, I'm just nobody on the internet. Maybe I'll accidentally click on this. And he's like, yeah, it looks pretty good. So
Just label it cute cat video. We'll get loads.
Yep. So, Andy, you need to go grab one of your. Do you still have 2 cats, right?
Yeah, we still have Batman and we have Minerva.
Yeah. So, grab one of your cats, hold it for like half of a second, and then that's it.
Yep.
All right. So, yeah, as any good joke, Adam, it's been told many a time. So, does anybody have any questions here? Are we good to go?
What's the meaning of life?
And reacting to that will take so long. So, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Sallin, joined by 2 wonderful co-hosts.
Andrew Dennison.
Trent Ham.
Trent will be the star of tonight's episode as we talk about Gen Con 50, which Andy and I both had to sit, unfortunately, through meetings at our school and listen and see what Trent was taking in at this wonderful convention. So we'll be here for moral support. And as always, we're going to be giving our reviews and hypes. but it's going to be mainly Trent telling you about all the goodness that came out of Gen Con 50. Spoiler alert, he might talk a little bit about the Fantasy Flight unveilings that happened there. Before we get kicked off here, I'd first of all like to invite everybody listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube to go check out our Good Board Ugly Guild on Board Game Geek. It's Good Board Ugly Guild number 2173. And if you just search like the Board Game Geek guilds, you'll be able to find us. We're a podcast-related guild. Also, check us out. We're on Twitter. @GoodBoardUgly is what I use to post from. Trent's @GamingTrent. @DennisonScience is Andy. And all those things should be posted if you check this out on YouTube or if you can find it on Punchboard Media. Speaking of Punchboard Media, we're a proud new members of Punchboard Media, where everybody brings something to the table. So basically, you go to Punchboard Media and you'll be able to find written reviews, podcasts, videos, all kinds of good stuff, great things that are coming from all different kinds of content creators. So go check out some of the great stuff at Punchboard Media. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Game Surplus, gamesurplus.com, or send them an email. Carmen would love to hear from you. games@gamesurplus.com. Recently getting in stock all kinds of goodies from Asmodee and their similar companies and affiliates that are now legal to be sold in Game Surplus again. So check out games like the new edition of Modern Art with beautiful new artwork that's been put out by Cool Mini or Not. Many other games you can find there. Check them out, games@gamesurplus.com or just gamesurplus.com. Tell them that the Good, the Board, and the Ugly sent you. I'd also like to take a second here to invite everybody who listens to the Good, the Board, and the Ugly to check out the Longview podcast. I'm now one of the co-hosts of the Longview podcast together with TC Reed. We talk about one game at length. So we just recorded an episode on YouTube of Twilight Imperium 3, and it was a wonderful episode. Before that, we've done Forbidden Stars. Anyway, the way that we're doing it now is you can check out these episodes on YouTube, and TC does an awesome job editing, but when you listen to one of the episodes, you'll know why it takes him so long. But it takes him a while to turn out these episodes. So that also might be why you are listening to this episode release before our episode 127, which we recorded last week with Jeff Gamble, the Longview. That one is being edited by TC. I told him not to spend much time on it, and he told me that he wouldn't. Then the next day, he said, I've already spent 4 hours on it, and I knew that this one was going to take a while. So anyway, at some point, Andy, that episode that you and I recorded with TC and Jeff, sort of a crossover Good Board Ugly and Longview episode, will at some point be released. But all of these things are available to be watched live as we are being joined right now by such good folks as Adam, who's been our loyal supporter for quite a while. It's great to see you there in the live chat, Adam. You can always check us out. Subscribe to the Good Board Ugly YouTube channel, and you'll be able to figure out when we're going live. I also tweet about these things if you follow me at Good Board Ugly. So all those things out of the way. Is there any other business that I missed, guys? I know that was quite a bit of business. Anyway, I think we're good to go here and get kicked off with our reviews. And let's go ahead and start, since I need to rest my voice for a second, with Andy giving us a first impression of a Euro XX.
Yeah, so I had a chance to play the game City of the Big Shoulders, which I know they were doing demos of at Gen Con, I believe, as well, actually.
Yeah, this is a prototype version still, right? This is
yeah. The one I shared pictures of on Twitter was basically a print and play copy, which, of course, like every time I do a print and play copy, it's probably overproduced for a print and play copy. But anyway, so the game, yeah, is very much kind of like if you like ratcheted out an 18x stock market and like belted it onto a Euro game. I don't know. My initial thoughts were, I think it was very interesting. I did enjoy the play. Before I kind of finalize my thoughts, I'm going to need a second play just because it was sometimes kind of hard to remember what to do, because there were some times when you go in like lowest to highest, then highest to lowest, and then there was just a lot of checking of the rule book. But it was pretty interesting. And you basically, there's a lot of cool things. It's like, I can attach this to this, and this is awesome. And I can attach this to this, and that's awesome. But it's basically recreating like the building up of Chicago. And all the companies are in there, so you can have like Cracker Jack or the crappy shoe company I have, and I'm never playing that one again. And a lot of other ones. But yeah, it was really interesting. It was a pretty good economic game. I don't know, but I'll give a more thorough review after I have another play or two. I need at least one more, if not a couple more, to really kind of get my brain fully. I want to at least play it once, basically, where I'm not having my nose in the rule book constantly, making sure we're doing things right. So, but I am very intrigued. It's very interesting. It is a pretty solid economic game from the look of it so far. It's not, I think it's due out like later 2018 or something like that.
It's due to kickstart in 2018. So the actual delivery date could be anywhere from late 2018 to, who knows when. Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, we interviewed the designer on the podcast. That actually got me intrigued to go put a copy together. And yeah, so a lot of people really enjoyed it. I think the general feeling was everyone really wants to play it again now that maybe the rules can kind of get a little more out of the way this time. The iconography and all that was really good. But yeah, it very much just is. I think what the designer said he was going for was, just your diehard Euro gamers into playing economic games to try to like push them into the world of 18xx. I think it probably does that pretty well. Like it does take out some of those elements of 18xx and it belts it to this Euro mechanisms that I think work pretty well for it from what I've seen so far. So I will talk more about that one in the future again when I get at least another play or two. So that's City of the Big Shoulders.
Yes, I helped to teach this game since I had a little bit of experience, just haven't played a demo. The first and most important thing I wanted to mention is how grateful I am, Andy, to you to putting that whole prototype together. It is beautiful. Andy, was this your biggest 3D printing project so far? Or, I mean, just in terms of like scale, or would you say that you've put together other games that are bigger? I know that Container had some intricate things.
Now, Container was what I 3D printed. That actually wasn't too bad. I think probably this was the most in terms of chopping up chipboard. So,
oh man, it's because
I have feeling in my hands, and it's not. I don't have carpal tunnel yet, so that's probably a good sign. Yeah, I don't know, because most people are like, let's build a prototype. Let's put it all on like index cards. Get off the laser printer, attaching it to chipboard, cutting it out, 3D printing all of the meeples because I'm crazy. But it works. Yeah. I think didn't even the designer, someone get on and was like, that might be the best pre-production artwork copy I've seen so far. But yeah, no, it's fun. I just enjoy doing print and plays as kind of like a side hobby. I find that I enjoy being crafty if the thing I'm crafting will have some discernible value. After it's something I can use. If it's just like make a painting of a kitty, I'm like, no. But I don't know. So anyway, it's an interesting game.
Make a painting of the kitty. No, dude, this looks like almost production level. Like the cubes, all the cubes that would be made out of wood, Andy's made out of it with his 3D printer, and they're like, they're higher quality cubes than what comes in like Robinson Crusoe, at least the original edition. I haven't seen the newest one, but those tiny little black and white cubes are awful.
Yeah.
So
3D printers are fun.
Oh man. So Andy, it was a really cool experience to see all of that awesome stuff go together. I just had a really disconcerting comment. Somebody just posted here. Joe Wiggins joined us in the live chat, said he just got to play Gaia Project, which is the Terra Mystica in space, and it is really tough for me. I just want you guys to know that my struggle and hiccups there, aside from being a terrible host, have to do with that. That is really, really cool. And man, Trent, I wonder if you saw anything from that, but we'll have to wait to get to that. Thoughts on City of the Big Shoulders were that it, to me, has a lot of really intuitive, interesting pieces going on in it. I've still only played it the once. I was really just helping you guys out, helping you feel things out. And I think that even since I last played it, I've seen quite a bit of new sort of additions in terms of what buildings pay where. And to me, the graphic design had been improved. So, I mean, one of the cool things about this one is you're going to see quite a bit of development in it. So without being able to say anything further about the game itself, I think that the amount of development being put into it is kind of exciting. So that's my thoughts on City of the Big Shoulders. Thank you, Andy.
Yep.
And now, yes. And now I'm going to tell you about Spirit Island. I've been waiting to review Spirit Island. I was thinking about it last week, and then it ended up not really working out. And I was happy that it didn't work out because I kind of got a chance now to really feel out the game. I've played it roughly 10 times. Not quite, but I've had a few kind of half games of it here and there, and I have just been dedicating a large portion of my life to this game here recently, and it has nothing to do with like a commitment that I have to anything particular. It's just that I am completely infatuated with it. Spoiler alert. Spirit Island is a cooperative game about trying to push away the settlers that have come to your island. You play as spirits, which are not the same as gods. If you read the lore in the rulebook, they're kind of more just like other inhabitants of the island that besides these native people that are called the Day Hand. Anyway, you're going to be playing cards, which you start with a hand of 4 unique cards. And then these cards have symbols on them that you're trying to collect, and the more symbols you can play, the better abilities you can set off, because you've got these innate abilities that'll key off of specific symbols. There's like 8 possible ones, but you're only ever going to have usually between 1 and maybe 4 on a card. Anyway, when you get these abilities to go off, they're going to do effects like push the invaders around and destroy them. And that's going to create fear, which fear is kind of in essence like a way for you to make the game easier and actually doable, meaning you can actually win the game. You're also going to get cool effects from these fear cards that are going to go off. Anyway, after you maybe get an effect from a fear card, after you've played your cards, some of your cards are fast and they go off before the enemy gets to act. Some of them go off later. The enemy, when it acts, will first destroy whatever place it is in of a specific terrain type. Then if you've survived that, which usually the Ravage is when you might lose because this thing called Blight will spread around. Think pandemic disease. If you ever run out of Blight, game over. I mean, it really is, it is like the quintessential cooperative game comparable to most other cooperative games out there where you do stuff, enemy does stuff. Now, interestingly here, you are able to preempt them on certain effects, but not preempt them on other ones. So this creates, like the enemy kind of goes in between some of your actions. Also, other things about this is that, first of all, you've got 8 different unique spirits you can play as. And each of these 8 spirits has varying levels of complexity, and they will really push you to play in a different direction. One of the advanced heroes, or advanced spirits, is an ocean spirit, which now there are these areas that are considered coastal areas that the enemy generally spawns from. And now you're actually going to be inhabiting those and trying to push people into those and do what's called drowning these colonists to get yourself money. That's like the only way that spirit actually makes the energy that's the currency in the game. It's no other spirit works quite like that. None of the other spirits give you currency from drowning people. None of them involve drowning. There's another one that's like a river that has a lot more manipulating position, kind of like you're gushing them around the board and then drowning them, maybe, but not the same. There's a lightning striker guy who's very aggressive. You've got Earth, 2 different Earth ones. One of them is very growth focused and spreads out on the board. One of them is just very defensive, kind of like your bodyguard type of archetype. And then there's a couple other ones that really rush the fear in the game. They don't do much in terms of help you from letting the colonists overrun, but they will just usually make the game get easier, or not necessarily get easier, but get more attainable. As the colonists get more afraid, your victory condition kind of becomes easier and easier. So all of this all in the base game. And right now I'm focusing entirely on the base game. There's a bunch of other playable stuff here. I haven't even touched the scenarios. I haven't touched the adversaries. And these are things that add more replayability to the game. I'm just entirely talking about the base stuff that comes in the box on the base difficulty. And we're talking like it goes up to difficulty level like 13. So my thoughts on Spirit Island are, I think that it is probably, in terms of the type of cooperative game that it is, which is a fairly archetypal, bad stuff happens, you do stuff, bad stuff happens, you do stuff. You know, it's not like Mage Knight where it's this cooperative game that's more like, you know, you're fighting your own constant puzzle. Here, you're going to be reacting to a very tactical advancing of these invaders. And so there's an inherent tactical nature to the game, though they are very predictable. And what they can do is going to be, generally, their exploration is unknown until they explore, but then once they explore a territory, they're then going to build and ravage that on the next 2 turns. So you do know what's going to happen. You are able to plan. And what's really huge here in Spirit Island is the amount of cooperation that needs to happen between players. Because if you do not talk about what's going to be happening on the board, who's going to take what you're going to be going for, there is a very large chance that you're going to be overrun. And so I found that I struggled most learning this game because of the necessity for cooperation. However, once I knew what was going on, it was just absolutely packed with decisions about what cards to play now. You have, I didn't even go into really how your spirit works, which is that you've got like kind of like Terra Mystica where you remove things and give yourself better abilities as you remove them, or Hansa Teutonica. And then you're able to growth, which you've got different options of growth. And that also reflects the difference, you know, the different qualities of your spirit. There's just so much richness in this game. And the decisions never let up. It feels like as soon as you finally get a grasp, you've won, and you can now pack it up and play it again. And I just find that this is one of the few games that I am willing to play over and over and over. And I can highly recommend it from my own perspective. Now, I'm going to go more in depth to maybe other aspects of the game, but this has been a long enough review as it goes. And I'm going to probably put those into a video. And also, you can wait until my next week, which I'm kind of already giving a little idea of what my hype's going to be because there's an expansion out there. Anyway, that's what I have to say about Spirit Island. I don't know if you've got a chance to play this one, Trent. Have you yet?
Nope.
Well, dude, I'm thinking maybe this Sunday. Maybe it'll happen, because I would love to teach you. This is a game that I like so much that I've been willing to actually step out of a game just so I can run it for other people to play it. And I've done that on a couple different occasions. It really is just one that I'm that enthusiastic about. The theme of the game gives me the feels, just like how well it's executed, and also the idea of you being like a spirit, you know, trying to push away these people that are essentially destroying your land. I don't know what it is about that, but it just gives me feels. So I'm really pumped, hopefully, Trent, to get you playing this. And now I want to hear from Andy, because I've played this game with Andy on 2 different occasions, and I know you've played it a 3rd time because I kind of helped out in that game as well.
Oh yeah. I really enjoy this. I think this is probably the closest co-op I've played to something on the level of closer to a heavy game. It's just a lot of
remember,
like.
Andy's saying Mage Knight isn't heavy. Go on.
Well, one where it's more team based. So I don't know. Mage Knight to me doesn't feel like a traditional sort of co-op. This one kind of follows the tropes of a lot of co-ops. But a lot of the card combinations and things you can do with it are pretty interesting. And you do have to think a lot on your turn. The thing is, you could alpha game this maybe at some point, but there's so many sort of things to think about while you're doing it. It's kind of hard to then figure out another person's character and be like, oh, you should be doing this, this, and this. I'm sure that day will come for someone who's played it enough, but I don't know. I enjoyed it. I found over the last year, I've kind of gotten less enthused about co-ops, and this is one I'd still play again, hands down.
I'm glad to hear that, Andy. Yeah, I know that this being not really in your wheelhouse, I think it shows that it is a very strong entry in this particular genre. And I was especially interested by the way that the designer described this game came to be. He said he was playing a game about settling, and instead of mentioning Catan, which would be your, what most people are going to see this as like anti-Catan, and I'm really glad that it has that selling point, but he didn't play Catan and think about this. He was playing like Navigador, Endeavor. You know, we're talking about hobby games, levels like some of the great Euro games out there. To do was make it so you couldn't alpha game. So there's just so much information that you personally have to filter, and your oh man, I want to say opponents, but your teammates. Your teammates have so much information that they're deciding that it is just not possible to alpha game it. You really do need like other warm bodies there, and you're gonna have to let them go. And that's what I love about it. I do think that it helps out quite a bit. Definitely, you can still alpha game, but it's not one that I think lends itself immediately to that. So anyway, that is my take on Spirit Island. And Spirit Island, Trent, I think you maybe shared a picture of Spirit Island. I forget, but at Gen Con, was there any buzz regarding it, or what was the buzz, I guess? You go ahead and tell us all about it.
I don't think there was any really consensus game that had buzz. There was, I would go up to people and you go up to 50 people and they name 50 different games that they were excited about. It's kind of the way it felt.
Well, it is Gen Con 50, so maybe that's just the motif for this year.
That's just kind of, I mean, that's just how it felt. You'd hear one person, they were excited about Whistle Stop, and you'd talk to another person, they were excited about L5R. You talk to another person, they were excited about this. Talk to another person, they were excited about that. I spent literally a day and a half doing nothing but dealer hall and just going around and looking for games I was interested in, and if a demo was available, sitting down to play it, and if not, going on to the next one. And I didn't even demo half the games I wanted to demo. There's just so much there. Gen Con is almost overwhelming. I mean, if you go in there and you're extremely, extremely picky on what you're going to play, like I'm going to go in there and I'm refusing to play anything that's not 4 hours long or something like that, so then maybe you'll find it limiting. But if you go in there and just say, I'm going to try anything that looks interesting, and you can go through that dealer hall and not find something to demo, there's something wrong. I mean, if you can't go through that dealer hall and find something engaging to you, or 10 things engaging to you, I don't think you're a gamer. I went in there with a very limited list of games I was really excited to play, and I kept finding more and more and more and more and more stuff to demo. So, I mean, I guess I should probably just start going through the list of stuff that
Yeah, just start telling us about it, man. You got a bunch of games that were announced like the night before Gen Con, right?
Some of it, I don't even really know. There was a lot of games there that I enjoyed. Let's put it that way. I'll start off, I guess I'll talk about how I spent a lot of my Thursday. I didn't really get into the rush the dealer hall bit so much. That's not really my thing at all this year. So there was nothing I was that excited to pick up right upon the opening of the dealer hall. But I went in there and wandered around for a little bit just to look around. I took a couple pictures of things. The thing that I noticed when I was first in the dealer hall is I was astounded by the number of people that were buying L5R and the sheer number of copies that Fantasy Flight had of that game, Legend of the Five Rings. I was talking to a friend of mine that was at the Fantasy Flight booth, and literally every person that was going through was buying 2 copies of the base game, which is what everybody was allowed to buy. Like, I literally overheard 100 people while I was standing there talking to a friend of mine buying it. And the line went on and on and on. As far as I could tell, they all had 2 tickets to buy L5R. Guess as to how many Fantasy Flight sold, it had to easily be in the thousands. Wow. And I'm not exaggerating a bit. They just flew through tons of copies of it.
But they did have it well stocked, it sounds like.
Yeah, and they still sold out. That was not even a question. They sold out of that and also Twilight Imperium 4th Edition, which they showed up with, which I don't think anyone really thought that would be something they would show up there with. But there were a lot of people toting those around the dealer hall. There's 25-pound boxes full of tons of components. What I did mostly on Thursdays, I actually played in the Legend of the Five Rings tournament, which are like, how can you have a tournament for that game if it's literally been just released at Gen Con? Well, you go and sit down at a table, and they hand you a core set, and they're like, figure out the game and submit a deck. It wasn't really a deck list, I guess you could say. It was kind of a pseudo deck list, and you had to submit it half an hour later. That's literally how they did it. So everybody gets a core set, you open it up, you try to figure out some semblance of what's going on, and then you submit what I would call a pseudo deck list. Mostly we were just claiming like your factions, and then you were literally dumped into the tournament and started playing it. Very few people really fully grasped the rules. A lot of the first game or two in that tournament was learning It's definitely their heaviest LCG. I don't think there's any question about that at all. I don't think I used to avidly play Netrunner, and there's more decision points on the table in this than there is in Netrunner. This is very, very much a game, more than any of their other ones, where I don't think your deck building matters that much, but you're going to win or lose based on the decisions you make in game. Everything that they possibly can within the format of you coming to the table with your decks built to move what matters in the game to the table. I don't know how they could do it any more than this, other than like literally set your hand constantly. I mean, I really don't know how they could move more of it to the table than they have in L5R.
What specific sorts of things? So, like, is it built off of the old L5R system? Is it built off a Netrunner? What LCG or card game is it most comparable to?
They took pieces of the old L5R CCG. They definitely took a couple pieces from Netrunner. They took a couple pieces from Game of Thrones, the card game. How you do the battle, the combat is a lot like Thrones. It feels a lot like Game of Thrones in that you're doing challenges. Instead, you're only doing 2 challenges around rather than 3.
Okay.
It feels a lot like L5R in that you have 2 separate decks, and you have cards off of one of those decks that are face down that are essentially your provinces, and you win by attacking another player's provinces. That feels like Legend of the Five Rings. It feels like Netrunner in terms of how the resources are managed. And this is the part that really got me thinking. So in this game is you get a ton of resources each round. They're called fate. It's like your coins you're spending to bring out stuff. You just get a bunch each round, like 8, 9 of them, depending on what you got your setup. But the thing is, if a character costs 2 and you pay 2 to play it, it dies at the end of the round. Okay? Nothing you can do to prevent that.
Just every character that costs 2 always dies?
If you spend 2... Okay, hold on a second. Let's say a character costs 2 as an example. Okay, you play it on the table. Got it? 2 to play it, it dies at the end of the round. You have to pay additional fate. The fate is the money in this game. To keep it on the table. So let's say I played it with 2 and I paid 2 more, so I paid 4 total. I would put 2 of those fate on the character. Then at the end of the round, I remove a fate from that character. At the end of the next round, I remove a fate from that character. At the end of the subsequent round, it dies. Never die in combat. There is nothing equivalent to a military conflict like there is in Game of Thrones. They never go away. Counters. There's like one way in the game to kill them, and it's horrible for you to have ever done it. It has very negative consequences for you if you kill another character. But the decision of how long they stay around. So every time you're making a decision, you're trying to decide, well, how many turns do I want to keep this guy out? Do I want to put expensive guy? Do I want to spend even more to keep him out for more rounds? In which case, I'm doing nothing else this round. Do I want to play a bunch of cheap chuds, and they're going to overwhelm the opponent, and this round's going to be really good for me, but they all go away at the end of the round? It's always decisions like that all the time. Like everything is a resource management in this game. It feels like every choice you make is a resource management choice. It's resource management, the LCG game.
Huh.
And
that sounds very interesting.
It can be a mind melt. You sit there staring at the board, and I haven't played it enough yet to have any sort of gut idea of what I should be doing in a lot of board situations.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on it in that game. I will say it feels to me like the card power level is very dialed down. Like they didn't push it with anything that seems crazy and like potentially really strong right out of the shooting match. Felt like there was always cards in the core set that were insanely strong, like Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones. There's nothing like that in this. Nothing feels overpowered.
Is it only 1v1, or do they have like a melee version?
It's only 1v1 for now. There are rumors that they are going to have melee rules later on.
Okay.
And I can see easily how they could have melee rules. It's not much of a stretch. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I ended up picking up 2 more core sets later, so I have 3 for a full play set, and I can build multiple decks. I was completely enamored with it. One of the guys I was rooming with also played in the tournament, and him and I ended up playing it late at night, playing more games of it. I really enjoyed the game. It's just fantastic. Now, it's got a Far Eastern fantasy theme. That may be your thing. It might not be. I mean, you can decide for yourself what the theme is, but I can vouch for the gameplay. It's probably, in terms of mechanics, in my opinion, the best LCG they've made.
The most what you said? The most, so, I'm sorry, man. I missed that word.
In my opinion, mechanically, it's the best LCG they've made.
Okay. Oh, okay. The best. All right. I didn't hear, man. It kind of cut out just a little bit. So the best LCG that you have played in you that you would say from Fantasy Flight. So, and that to me, like, those LCGs are pretty high pedigree. So, does it have anything like how are you obtaining cards in the game? Is it kind of all just based on your setup? It sounds to me like just about everything, because you didn't go into depth that much. You kind of said it's all depends kind of on your setup. So is all these things like stats that are essentially manipulatable, but not like on a level of like Game of Thrones where you just have this pre-built deck, but more like based on choices you make? Is that what I was getting?
Well, you kind of have, the best way I can describe it is you have two hands. And one of the hands is literally laid on the table and the opponent can see it.
Okay.
You're going to be able to do in the next couple rounds with one of those hands. The other hand is entirely fast effects that they can't see. But the fast effects tend to be weaker.
Okay.
Things you can just do to interrupt. But those effects tend to be much more minor. The big things they can see. They know what you have coming.
Huh.
Because your hand is effectively on the table. They're guarding each of your provinces. That hand is effectively what it's doing.
So is it when you draw these cards, they either go to your hand that's hidden or you're open-faced on the table, depending on card type?
No, it depends on your deck. You have two different decks. One of them has there's black cards and there's white cards.
Wow, okay.
The white cards are basically on the table that your opponent can see, and the black cards are in your hand.
Mm-hmm. Man,
and the black cards are generally weaker, but they can be played whenever, and they're kind of secret.
I think that FFG has a problem with making too many quality LCGs for me to be able to keep up, man. This sounds really amazing, and but boy, I do have one question though, because I've been very critical. As much as I love the Game of Thrones LCG, I've been very critical of specifically how they distributed the core set. Now
it's the same as Game of Thrones.
All right, well, I just feel like there's such a missed opportunity. Now, I don't know the world of L5R, but I just feel like, making it so that people are essentially required to buy more than one box set and for it to really be playable is always going to prohibit a lot of people from playing. It's one of those things that people can just kind of hang their head on. A lot of people, say no legacy games. A lot of people will say, no games that don't have replayability, no one-shot games. And I feel kind of like a lot of people are able to justifiably say, I'm not going to get that because they're requiring me to make double the investment that it looks like. And I'm not saying anything here about the game itself, entirely about the distribution model, which I think could be much improved. Now, did you say that you have to have 3 sets like Game of Thrones, or is this just 2 sets?
Yep. It's 3 like Game of Thrones.
So, but at this Gen Con tournament, you were only allowed a limit of 2?
No, you were allowed 1. You received it, and that's what you had to build your deck from immediately.
Oh, on 1 copy? In a game that is really kind of built to be made with 3 copies? All right, Trent, I think might be having a little bit of technical difficulties there. So I just wanted to quickly update. We have had a lot of really interesting comments in our chat here. Joe Wiggins, welcome, Joe, as well as TC. Welcome, TC, who is probably in the midst of listening to us as he continues to edit this that he's decided is going to be his coup de grace in terms of podcast editing, which is the last week's episode of The Good Boy, the Ugly, and the Long View kind of crossover. Anyway, it's the comments that we've been getting have been more updates from Joe Wiggins about his experience with Gaia Project, which has me so incredibly excited about it. And Trent, by the way, if you can hear this, we still can't hear you.
I can hear you just fine. You actually sound like you're cutting out to me. So
okay. Uh-oh. Ken has internet here in small town Iowa. So anyway, Trent, the last that I heard, I was kind of waiting for a response, and it was about the world and just I was kind of shocked at 1 core set versus needing 3 for a real deck. How did that work out in the tournament?
They felt like there was a lot of people playing a variety of decks. I have a hard time assessing how much deck building you can do out of the core set. I know you can pretty much. It's like Game of Thrones. You kind of are essentially choosing a main faction and a side faction.
Okay.
And that's effectively what you're doing in this. So you can mix and match them as you wish. There was plenty of neutrals to do some deck building. They gave recommended deck lists for each of the factions. I modified mine. I was Lang Clan, which is like the all military in your face all the time clan. There was a little bit of deck building, but it was. Like I said, I built my deck in like 15 minutes, barely knowing the rules of the game. I now have 3 core sets. I've kind of been digging into deck building ever since. It's much more in depth and difficult to really comprehend whether your deck is any good when you have 3 core sets and you're trying to teach your kid how to play it and he's not quite grasping it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, so Trent, that was about L5R. Now, that wasn't the only thing that you got from the Fantasy Flight booth because they had some other really big announcements.
Well, I demoed TI4.
Okay, did not obtain a copy?
No, I did not obtain a copy. Well? The only thing I bought from Fantasy Flight was L5R stuff, and I bought the start of the next cycle for Arkham Horror, the card game, the Path to Carcosa box set. But I bought that, and then that's all I actually purchased from Fantasy Flight. I didn't buy much at the con, actually. But I did demo a few things at their booth. I demoed TI4. It felt like TI3. It felt so much like TI3 that I don't know what they're changing, other than it felt like they put 90% of the worthwhile content of TI3 and both of its expansions in the TI4 box.
So more of like almost a greatest hits edition.
Yes, they changed the politics and they changed the tech tree, but it didn't feel like it was anything that majorly changed the overall feel of the game. And really, when I was demoing it, I was thinking this is pretty much just like TI3, except without the rough corners that TI3 had.
Well, and that kind of might be a good thing, right? Because if they did some huge change, that could be kind of controversial. Like, very much so. People who love StarCraft, when Forbidden Stars came out, there's a lot of people that swore off it. So
I think they were even closer than those two. They're pretty similar.
Oh yeah, well, Forbidden Stars is a departure in many ways, and it makes it sound like what you said, that this is kind of the same.
I think if you have TI3, you really, and especially if you have both expansions, there isn't a big rush to get TI4. I'm being completely serious.
Okay. Well, that might hurt TC's feelings. He's joining us here in the chat, and we actually just recorded a Longview episode on TI3, actually very, very recently in the last few days, and he was talking about how he has it pre-ordered and it's on his way to him. So I'm sure he's still going to be very, very excited to get it. I doubt you could really make him any less excited with how much he loves the game, but it certainly sounds to me like it's kind of more of a gradual difference and less of like an earth-shaking, like, let's try to usher in a new generation to play this game. More of just like, hey, all you guys that have heard how amazing this game is with all of its stuff, we're just going to clean it up a little bit for you. It's already a great game.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they will definitely have at least one expansion for this, moving it up to 8 players and then including about 10 more factions in it. I think that's pretty much a given. In fact, the guy demoing it was practically hinting at it.
How long does a demo of TI3 or TI4 take? Because like a game of this takes like 8 hours.
We did a round that was already set up. It was probably a few rounds into the game, and you just do one round like it's at that stage. So you get a flavor of all the different things the game has to offer. It took maybe 30 minutes.
Okay. So they do have it digestible. I was just, so many of those demos at Gen Con, like Gen Con really is the focus on purchasing. And that's the one thing I did here was that people came to Gen Con this year to buy the games, like I almost feel like we should talk about just, the idea of like, what can you really figure out from a demo? And, on Essen, they do kind of full playthroughs. But anyway, I think it's interesting that we do those demos. And obviously in a game like TI4, playing the full game at Essen would take all day, so that's not going to work out. that wasn't all that they had coming out from Fantasy Flight, was it, Trent? Was there was a few other things that got released or announced.
They announced Star Wars Legion, which is like a ground miniatures game of Star Wars at the con. And I did demo it, yes. It felt like much like a traditional miniatures game. Like the Rune Wars game kind of goes off in its own little weird direction that's very different than everything else. This felt more like something that someone that played Warhammer or any of the other various myriad miniatures games. It's more of a standard miniature system.
Is it at all like Armada? You know, or are you using tape measures here? Or are you using kind of the similar arcs and stuff? Like
probably closest to Armada of anything, but I think it's a little bit lighter than Armada, and it's all ground stuff. There's no it's like I don't want to say it's ground Armada. That's not really fair to it. It felt it felt more like my memories of Warhammer than anything else, more than Armada. If you're comparing to any of the Fantasy Flight's like Star Wars games, it's definitely closest to Armada, I thought.
And you quite like Armada, from what I recall. So would you then be interested in Legion, or do you think that you're either committed or more interested in Armada?
I would prefer to play Armada, but if there were a lot of Legion players around, I would not object to switching to Legion.
Also, yeah, it's kind of hard for them to crack into a market that's as established as like Armada is. Like, you've just got so many things out for that at this point.
Yep. So
that wasn't all.
They found
go ahead.
That they announced there. The only other new thing from Fantasy Flight that I tried was Whitehall, which was like Letters from Whitechapel Light. In fact, it actually reminded me a lot of a Spectre Ops, which is like a hidden movement game from Plaid had a couple years ago. I wasn't really much of a fan of Whitehall. I would rather play Letters from Whitechapel. If I was going to play a light game like that, I would play Scotland Yard.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of the way I felt with Spectre Ops, and that would then, using that as a frame of reference. Did you have was it more like Scotland Yard, Letters from Whitechapel, or Spectre Ops in terms of like what happens in the event of the bad guy being discovered?
It was probably more like, honestly, more than anything, it was more like Fury of Dracula, I guess.
Okay, yes.
It's me at all. There are just other hidden movement games that I would rather play rather than Whitehall. If I was going for just kind of a marriage trashy hidden movement game, I'd play Fury of Dracula. If I wanted really deductive, I'd play Letters from Whitechapel. This doesn't replace either one of them.
Yeah, my problems with anything besides, like you said, Letters from Whitechapel and Scotland Yard is that what's entertaining about those games is, the hidden movement part. And a lot of the other games you've mentioned tend to have other things tacked on once the hidden movement sort of ends, meaning once the bad guy gets found, which usually happens much more frequently in the games that you've mentioned in a negative way. So, I mean, I kind of see where you're getting at here, Trent, and I believe we're of the same mind.
Okay. I looked at the Civ game that Fantasy Flight was demoing. It looks like their old Sid Meier's Civ game with a lot of the redundant stuff taken out. Like, I feel like I'm going to use Andy's favorite word. It was a streamlined Sid Meier's Civilization. New Dawn. It's basically the same game, just cut down to about an hour and a half. That may be good for some people. That may not be good for some people, but there you have it.
Yeah. Streamlined. Andy's favorite words.
So I would say Whitehall and Civilization and New Dawn were both examples of streamlining. I don't know if TI4 was. TI4 mostly just felt like I don't really know that was much streamlined at all. They just kind of redid a couple things that were actually pretty janky in the original game. But it didn't change enough that I felt like it was much of a change. So I'm done with Fantasy Flight now. That's enough Fantasy Flight.
What about the Fallout game?
I didn't even touch it. There was people around it. I'm not too interested in it. I skipped it.
Fair enough. Move on, sir.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Mini Rails, which is probably one of my favorite games that I demoed there was Mini Rails. Mini Rails was at the Tasty Minstrel booth, but it was being published by Moadis Games, I think is how it's pronounced. It reminded me of Paris Connection with this really interesting little, I don't even know what the right action selection mechanism, I guess you could put it. It's like okay, so if you've ever played Paris Connection, it's a really simple auction game where you're placing discs on a board and trying to make a long train route. Okay, so Mini Rails basically is like a much smaller Paris Connection board. And so you don't have all that much space to grow the things, to grow the chain of your railroads. But instead you're doing this action selection mechanism where there's these, you draw cubes out of a bag and use them to line up on a row. So like, let's say you're playing with 4 players. The 4 players would start off the game with their turn order being 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they're represented by pawns on the turn order track. Okay, and I have 6 rounds that you go through. Then out of the bag, you're going to draw 9 cubes, if I remember right. And then you line them up on a second turn order track next to you. Each of these cubes are of a different color. Those colors match up to the various companies that are in the game. So on your turn, you take your pawn when it's your turn, and you choose one of those other 9 cubes on that second track, and you move your pawn to there, and then you do something involving that company. You either buy stock in it or you operate it. So let's say I'm interested in the third company on the turn order track, and I'm first. So I move my token down there to the third one, and I have an option of either buying a stock or operating that company. Operating just means I grow to another tile in essence. I'm slowly growing out the network. When I move to a new tile, that usually does some sort of benefit to the stock price. Occasionally it lowers it. Acquire a stock of that company. So you're building out a small stock portfolio that's all going to be evaluated at the end of the game. So that's how you determine the turn order for the next round. Each round you're allowed to do each of one of them once, buy stock or operate the company. And then at the end, there's one company that's left over. And that's a company that basically is going to have a penalty at the end of the game. But it's one of those games that's easier to show you, but it's really fascinating how it works. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite games of the convention. Plays in about 45 minutes. This might be a Paris Connection replacement for me.
Huh.
And I really like Paris Connection.
So is it just a little bit more than Paris Connection then?
Oh, there's more going on here than Paris Connection, but it has kind of a similar feel is the way I felt about it.
Playtime anymore, or is it fairly comparable?
Is it what?
Is it playtime about the same?
It's a little bit longer maybe, because it's longer because of AP. I think people are going to stop and go like, what do I do? More than they do in Paris Connection. So take that for what you will.
Andy, any interest in this Mini Rails?
I'd give it a shot. I'm always interested in kind of like, basically, I would be interested to see if this falls into the thinky filler kind of category for me or not.
I think if Paris Connection does this well.
Yeah.
Great.
I brought home a copy of Mini Rails. I was quite happy to do so. It's very, very fun little game. Okay,
bring it, man. Bring it. We should play it.
Okay, I will definitely bring it on Sunday. I went to the Capstone's Games booth. They had a bunch of things coming out. The only thing I demoed was Climbers. I bought a copy of it. As I posted a picture somewhere on Twitter, maybe, of me playing it with my kids this evening. The Climbers is a great little logic game. Again, it's one of those I think of as a great heavy filler. It attracts attention because of the big chunky blocks that you have, the big wooden blocks. My oldest son, got it on our second playthrough. He didn't really understand what to do on the first one. On the second one, he built a big tower off on his own, so that later on no one could build onto it and get onto it or block him or anything. And we all ended up wasting our tokens, so we couldn't do anything about it. It looks simple because it just looks like big chunky blocks, but you're going to sit there kind of slack-jawed trying to figure out what to do next. And that's a good thinky filler. So I brought home a copy. It's pretty heavy. It's a bunch of wooden blocks in a box, very tightly fitting. When you see the Climbers box, there's not any wasted space in this box at all. And it probably weighs 10 pounds, a good 10 pounds. highly recommended as a thank you filler. Again, I will bring that to our next game night. That was all I played there. I know they brought out the Ruhr, but there was a lot of people around there. Edward from Heavy Cardboard was at their booth pretty much the whole weekend except for Sunday, and a lot of people were saying hi to him. So the capstone booth was pretty crowded.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think I saw.
I did go.
Clay posted a picture where like he couldn't even get into his own booth at one point.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy there. I went out to eat with them. They had a Heavy Cardboard meetup on Sunday. I went out to that. There was about 11 people at that.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, what else is there really to mention? Whistle Stop. That's a good one from Bezier Games. That was their big release there. I liked Whistle Stop quite a bit. I don't know how different people will think about this. It's a pick up and deliver game. You're placing tiles throughout the game, and it's one of those games where I've had two experiences with it. One of them was really good, and one of them was not so good. And I don't know which is really the real face of the game yet. I need to play it some more. It's got a nice train feel. It actually, honestly, ended up reminding me in the end rather less of a Turing game and more of a game like, I don't want to say Suburbia. That's not quite right. That's not a fair approximation. But it felt more along the lines of a Euro than a train game. Is really what it felt like. I did not feel like it was particularly confrontational, but I did enjoy it. I ended up picking it up because I know some people that will quite enjoy it. It is not as confrontational as I expected. It's more of a Euro game. I don't really know what else to say about it other than it's a pick up and deliver game that you're building. You're building as you go across the board. So like you start on one side of the board and you're gradually moving your train over to the next side of the board, moving along the rail paths that you build with hexagons. Along the way, you're stopping at various points, dropping off cubes, picking up cubes, etc., etc. That's basically the gist of it. There's a lot of interesting special places to stop. You have to think carefully about building routes. You can build some really nasty routes that do mean things to other players, and those kind of things. I was very high on it after Gen Con. Now I'm not sure about it. We'll have to see. I want to play it more. But that's Whistle Stop. I'm going to have to give it a more thorough review later on.
Yeah.
But I wanted to let people know that it's interesting, but I'm not sure I'm sold on it. I think it's probably where I would stand on that one.
Yeah, well, it's called Whistle Stop, so Andy's automatically going to be up for it.
I want to try it. I honestly, I was waffling on that game back and forth for a while. I'd read about it and be like, oh, maybe this is interesting. I'd be like, nah, it's not that interesting. I like delete it from my subscriptions on BGG again. And then later on, I was like, yeah, maybe there's an interest in it. And then like, I think it's gone in and out of my subscription like 4 or 5 times since I first heard about it. I don't know. It's one of those, like, I definitely want to try it. It's not an insta buy or anything, but I want to see what's there.
Trent, is there any other main points on your Gen Con? I mean, you also did go to the Secret Cabal meetup, which I've heard was absolutely fire limit packed.
Yes, people didn't get in. There were people outside that just didn't even bother to try to get in. I had some of their beer. It was pretty good. They had their own special brew at the brew house that they had at. It was pretty good. I ended up buying a growler of it, took it back to the hotel, and then one of my roommates drank almost all of it. So I had very little after I took it back.
Wasn't it called like Froth something?
I don't remember what it was called. That place was madness. I don't even know what was going on hardly. It's like packed in there like sardines. I'm surprised they didn't get in trouble. I don't really know. They're going to either have to find a different venue or ticket it or something next year because that didn't work.
Yeah, it would make sense clientele-wise, though, that the Secret Cabal's meetup would be just absolutely jam-packed, and I'm sure any Dice Tower event would be as well, whereas, like, Heavy Cardboard, if you are really that much into heavy games, Gen Con has some releases, but definitely the lion's share of the releases tend to be kind of outside of that general, sphere.
Okay, so I'm going to cover a couple of games that I stopped and looked at that I thought looked really interesting. One of them was obviously the Gaia project, which was being demoed at the Z-Man Games booth. When I saw it, there were people playing it. I watched a little bit. Reminded me of Terra Mystica. I like the fact that the temple track is gone, which is something that I was not a fan of in the original game. I just felt like it was tacked on. And now it feels like there's a much more useful replacement for it, which appears to be a technology tree.
Oh,
Other
yes.
than that, it reminded me a lot of Terra Mystica. I'm looking forward to playing it. This is probably my one game that I'm saying I'm going to get this from Essen that I've heard of or seen anything of. I got to sit down and attempt to start playing a demo of Feudum, but that fell through because there were issues going on at the booth. And then they was like, "Can you wait 15 minutes?" I'm like, "No, I cannot wait 15 minutes. I've got other stuff to do," so I didn't get to demo it. The game looks really, really cool. I like the visual style that they've adopted for the game. It's got an action selection thing going on. It looks like there's a lot of things going on, but I think it's one of those that will kind of melt into place once you start playing it. You had a handful of 11 action selection cards. I was able to figure that out. And like it's all simultaneous action selection. Everybody lays one down, flips it over, you all do it. Looking forward to playing it in detail in the near future. The designer guy seemed really nice, but he also seemed to be going through, I don't know, something was going on. I don't really know what it was. I played it, and I'm going to have to look up the name of this one. It's the one.
Hey, Trent, could you say the name of that game one more time? Some of the people missed it.
Feudum.
Feudum. Yes. Okay. I thought that's what you were talking about. I just didn't want to say the wrong thing. Dude, that's exciting.
So, like I said, I tried to demo it. It looks really pretty. I get to look at the components. I was going to demo it, but it didn't quite work out. I am trying to find the name. Give me just a second here of another game that I wanted to mention. It was the new upcoming release from CGE. I wanted to talk about that for a minute. I have it written down here, but I'm looking for it. Oh, there's two more I want to mention. Where is it? Give me just a second. There we are. Pulsar 2849. It's the upcoming game from CGE, designed by Vladimir Suchi, who designed things like Last Will. I actually really like this game, but it's one of those things where it's a mid-weight Euro without a lot of confrontation, which means that there's a particular friend of mine that I thought of the entire time I was playing it that this will be a game right up his alley. Jake, if you know him in our group, this is a game that he would love. I thoroughly highly recommend it to him. It's a midweight Euro, has a really nice tech tree, really cool dice drafting mechanism. It's not very confrontational at all. There's a lot of planning ahead in it. In other words, it basically sounds like something he would really, really like. I thoroughly enjoyed my demo of it. I thought it was really well done, but it's one of those, do you like midweight Euros with low confrontation? If the answer is yes, I highly recommend Pulsar 2849.
Andy, what do you feel about
then
that?
I don't.
Andy, I think Andy's interested.
Actually, I think I was one of the ones who asked Trent to look at it. I'm like, I like space games. Yeah, I'm probably going to pass on that one. It's, low confrontation, medium weight. No.
This is a dead zone. This is the dead space for Andy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I want to mention two more games. One of them is Wasteland Express Delivery Service, which I sat down to demo with really low expectations because I thought it was going to be a pure Ameritrash game. But it was designed by Matt Riddle and Ben Pinchback, which I do at least somewhat respect as designers. I was still expecting pretty much pure Ameritrash, but this is a really solid pick up and deliver game. Is what it boils down to. It has a very, very strong. The design and look of it is very much like the video game Borderlands. Like, to the point where I'm surprised I didn't try to get a license because it feels like that. That's what it looks and feels like. But it says it might as well be called Borderlands, but it says Wasteland Express Delivery Service in the box. But it's a very solid pick up and deliver game. I really want to play it again. I thoroughly enjoyed the demo. I even mentioned on Twitter, quote, "This is much better than expected." And I took a picture of the game box. Because it was probably the one game that went furthest beyond my expectations of anything I played there. So with fairly low expectations, like, this is actually really good. And this has a lot of really interesting decisions. I may pick it up at some point, maybe, I don't know. But I will say that it was definitely the game that exceeded my expectations the most at Gen Con. Not to mention the fact that I did play most of a full game of Rising Sun. I know there's going to be people interested in this. Rising, okay, so it's been said that if Blood Rage is an implementation of like Risk, that this is an implementation of diplomacy, and I think that is really accurate. It felt very, very, very diplomatic to me when I was playing it. That was the whole feeling I got, is everything you were doing was about building an alliance with another faction, that you were going to know that you were going to share abilities with that faction, and then deciding the right time to split that alliance apart and reform the alliances. That is what the game, the core decision of the game was that repeated several times throughout. Is this the time to split our alliance? Is this the time to jump into an alliance with another player? In the game, as a board, is a lot like Blood Rage, and that you're moving, like, it's got board combat that feels a little bit like Blood Rage. You got these big chunky miniatures that are moving around from location to location. But the interesting part to me is the fact that you were always in alliance with one of the other factions on the table, unless you're playing 5-player, in which one person
odd
is
numbers,
not.
right?
Yeah. Most of the time you're in alliance with another player on the table. And what that means, you have this awesome special ability, and then you're sharing it with that other person that's in alliance with you, in effect, is what that means. You're both getting both of your powers, in essence. You don't get quite their full power, but you get a really good power for being in alliance with them. But there's a benefit and a drawback to breaking it. The benefit obviously is then you can essentially re-ally with someone else, because you might find that you've gotten all the goodie out of the ability you've been borrowing, and you want to go to borrow another ability. But there's some drawbacks too. There's negative consequences for breaking an alliance. You basically move down the honor track core to the bottom, and that has consequences. It has a very nice flow to it. The game is stunningly, jaw-droppingly gorgeous. It just looks beautiful on the table.
Oh
yeah. I am very much. I liked Blood Rage. I think this will be a very much like for me when I get to play it multiple times. I did not get to play all the way through the full game, but I discovered that I didn't trust anyone else at the table, and they're all a bunch of diplomatic jerks.
Isn't that like your favorite gaming experience? Isn't that just like Trent in his element?
Yeah, so I will say that my borderline love of Rising Sun comes from the fact that I really have a passion for diplomacy. It's one of my favorite games of all time. If I was being honest with myself and making a top 10 of all time, diplomacy would probably be in it. This is diplomacy writ small with a bunch of other mechanisms in it. It's like diplomacy crushed it in an hour with some other mechanisms. And that to me makes it a lot of fun. It also has like crazy variable player powers. I am fully impressed with Rising Sun. Pretty optimistic about it, but having played it, and I posted a couple pictures on Twitter of it. Highly recommend it if that sounds appealing to you. Now, you're going to have to backstab in this game to win at it. I think that is almost how it's going to have to be. I don't think you can just sit there and be buddies with one person for the entire game and not just get wrecked. So take that for what you will. If you want diplomacy writ small and you're okay with that, I think you'll like Rising Sun. I kind of wonder, given that, how big of a hit this will be. I kind of wonder if in the long run, more average gamers will like Blood Rage better.
Huh. Just because of how much its like rhythm is not so gamey and more about diplomacy?
Yes. It has it looks a lot like Blood Rage, and you can feel a lot of Blood Rage in it, but it has a very different feel. Feels different on the table. It feels much more like, rather than I'm going to wreck these people, more like I don't trust these people.
Do you think that this might tap into what people really love about, say, like Cosmic Encounter, like all the negotiation, diplomacy going on?
Yeah, I can see that. There's no universe in which I played Cosmic Encounter anywhere near this. I mean, this is much, much better than Cosmic Encounter, in my opinion, but I think they might both scratch the same diplomatic edge. I just think this has more of the betrayal that is actually in diplomacy, but Cosmic Encounter really kind of has it, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked Blood Rage or Rising Sun. I'm really curious to see what the feedback is when it's out there in the wider world. My suspicion is that it ends up not being as well liked as Blood Rage. But for me, I would way rather play this than Blood Rage.
What do you think about player count? If if there's 4 players, do you just end up sticking with the alliance? Is it just best with 5 or an odd number because of that shifting player that's going to be out of alliances for a turn?
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's a pretty in-depth
I
question.
would stick with your alliances in 4, though. I think that there is incentive to break it because you're going to want a different ability in the future.
Yeah, and then also, like, the person who breaks it gets, like, that's one of the kind of cards that you... It sounded almost a little bit Innish-like, whatever, where you've got these action cards. Not the same, but, like, one of those action cards that's getting kind of passed around in a way to players is about breaking that alliance, as I recall. But, yeah, I mean, I'm just thrilled to try this one, Trent. I really think that this is going to really be more of where me and you intersect in terms of your love for diplomacy. And I think that this one's going to bring – I did like diplomacy, but playing that game for an entire day, especially considering how many friendships has been ruined, Rising Sun seems to me like it might be just more palatable and more game night friendly, if that makes sense, and probably thus we'll be able to get it played more.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm looking forward to it. I would love to see it at the table in the very near future.
Awesome.
So Adam in the chat asked with 5. No, I think it will work with 4. But what will happen, I think your incentive to break alliances is to have an alliance with one of the other players, and then it's not necessarily the one that's out of the alliances at the moment. And when alliances get split, there will be you'll probably have been hinting at or possibly even directly talking to another player who will also split, and you two will realign with each other. I suspect that's what will happen because it happened to me. I witnessed it happen to me.
Ooh. Is there anything, so the Game of Thrones board game had you placing down these action tokens, which could then sort of later on be sort of dealt with however you felt. Does Rising Sun have anything like that, or is this more?
Yes, it does. It has a very something like that. You have this. Okay. Notice in my pictures, you have a little screen in front of you, right? When it gets down to the combat phase, the combat phase has several steps, and everybody involved in the combat phase is okay. So you have a screen in front of you, and then behind it is this little like cardboard chip that displays the 4 steps of combat. So like different things happen in each of these steps. And what you do is you bid on behind your screen. You take your coins and you put them on each of the 4 steps on your little map of what the battle is going to be like. It's like just like a listing of the 4 steps. So you might put 3 coins on step 1 and 1 coin on step 2 and nothing on 3 and 4. So screen, whoever bids the most on that step gets a huge benefit for that step of combat. Like an enormous benefit.
Like OP broken.
So, yeah, like very, very strong. So there's a hidden auction mechanism in this. It's almost like a blind auction mechanism, except you're doing 4 of them at once. And the person that wins each of those auctions gets a huge battle benefit. Like enormous, like game-changing battle benefit. It's really interesting how that works. And you got people that you might be in an alliance with that you might be trying to convince them to let you have one of the phases on it and that type of stuff. It's got a lot of good stuff going on.
I am extremely, very, very interested in this game. I've got a copy coming in. Trent, you've got a copy coming in. I think that we're going to be able to give our thoughts, because hopefully this will be out hopefully before Essen, because usually when it's out, it was just a demo copy, right, Trent?
It was. The board, I think it was completed final components. I really
like
do.
A production copy, but it wasn't for sale.
No, but they were using what I think was the rollout mat rather than the actual board, because they sold like a vinyl mat that you could play it on. I think that was what the board was, and then all the miniatures I believe were final components. Everything seemed final. It didn't seem like a not final game. It seemed like this was the done deal. I didn't get confirmation of that from the person demoing it or teaching it to us, but it certainly seemed final. So I gotta assume they're close.
Yeah, I'm really hoping so. Hopefully this is not one where because you kickstarted it, you're gonna have to wait like an extra 6 months while they actually make all that stuff that was unlocked. I mean, I can see that happening. That happens with Cool Mini or not quite a bit. when this becomes available in stores and stuff, I really want to get my copy. I'm super pumped for this one.
Me too. I don't really have to come out, and my voice is starting to get rough. So I think
I was going to say, Trent,
stop.
you have really given your all to this episode. You've been telling us about a lot of stuff, man. And you've been giving a lot. Like, I'm surprised, man, with all the events that you already had scheduled and all the places you were. I can't believe you did all this stuff in the course of 5 days.
I was really tired on Sunday and Monday. I was a zombie. It was not good. I will say this much. There were a lot of games that I liked at Gen Con. The number that I loved was pretty low.
Okay. So excited, kind of happy, but like, nothing that was going to change your life good?
No, I mean, there are some that might grow on further plays. I mean, like, the Terra Mystica game, there's a lot of games I want to play more, but there weren't ones where I'm like, I need to own this, I need to own this, I need to own this. I felt that about, like, really honestly 2 games, and that was, 3 games. L5 are the Climbers and Mini Rails. Those are the ones that I would have been very disappointed if they didn't come home with me. The other main game I bought was Whistle Stop, and I felt like it was a really good demo, and then after that, I'm not sure. I'll have to see. I want to play it more.
Sure. Well, geez, Trent, quite a big bit to unpack there, but I'm happy that you were able to tell us about all those things. And I mean, man, I wish I'd have been able to be there, but you probably would have had so many things going on that we might have not even seen each other at this Gen Con. So there is quite a bit of things that intersected between my interests and the things that you did. So that definitely could have been arranged. Anyway, hopefully with next year, with the timing being better, we'll be able to do more of a tag team and won't leave you to let your voice slowly fade away.
I think that's worth adding as like a Gen Con for your information. Remember, there are a lot of teachers in the board game hobby. Maybe not scheduling at the start of most schools is a good idea.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Trent?
Next year, I believe, is going to be all of my children here. My wife and my
yes.
3 kids. So we'll see about that.
Yeah, that could be interesting then. Well, yeah, time will tell.
Just turn them loose in the battle crib area and then come back at night for them.
Andy's strategy with teaching middle school.
True.
The battle crib Andy has in his classroom.
I don't really have a hype.
What was that?
After all this, I really don't have a hype, so I'm mostly going to rest my voice now. I will say, when I got home from Gen Con, I had a game waiting for me when I got home, and that was Sidereal Confluence.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, you've been waiting for that one.
It's pronounced Sidereal?
I don't know how it's pronounced.
Okay, Sidereal, Sidereal. Yeah, okay, I was just not sure. I may have said it wrong in the past.
Yeah, so it was sitting here waiting for me when I got home. So, yeah, I didn't really count that as a Gen Con one. I saw it for sale there. They had just gotten it in. They didn't actually have it on day 1. They didn't get it until like day 3. But that is one I'm definitely looking forward to playing.
I am actually quite interested in that one as well, Trent. So, I mean,
Sunday.
Dude, we have got enough for about several months full of Sundays. So I don't know how this is all going to happen. We need to have an extra game days here. And it's going to be tough because me and Andy have been a little lethargic. I'm feeling a little better than Andy, but we just started teaching again this week. So anyway, that's something that at least puts a little bit of a dampener on what we can do. So I did want to take a moment, though. This is kind of a crossover promotion here with the Longview podcast. And, I'm going to be mailing this out. So I feel kind of like, I'm going to be basically spending my own money to mail out a game for free to somebody. Whoever gets randomly selected, anybody who wants to enter this contest, all you need to do is send a picture of your tattered board, a game in your collection that's been well used, and you need to either tweet that with the handle, and you need to tag the Longview podcast on Twitter. You should also follow them. And you need to put the hashtag tattered board for the win. That's tattered board for the win. I'm going to be searching for that hashtag when I do this random.org thing. Also, on the Longview Guild, I've posted something where you can post a picture there. So either one of those places. Currently, the amount of entrants, people that have entered the contest, is quite low. As I recall, it's barely into double digits. So, I mean, somebody's going to get a really, really nice, brand new in-shrink game that I'm going to spend about, $13.45 is how much it costs for me to mail something priority UPS or USPS, and I'm gonna spend that. And Game Surplus donated it. So anyway, check out those contests and think about putting your game or putting your stuff on there. That's going to be until September 3rd. So even once this podcast episode drops, you're still probably going to have some time there. Now we're going to move on to hypes. And Andy, I think everybody would like to hear your voice because I can see that you're there, but man, yeah, like sometimes it was like, where has Andy gone to?
Well, I did get up at one point to go put my son to bed, so that happened. But anyway,
yeah.
The game I want to hype, and oh god, if I can pronounce it right, we will try. Optimates et Popularis, which is
sounds like Latin.
It's Latin. But basically, this is a game by Hollenspiel, who did an infamous Traffic for Cole Worley. So I got 2 games from them. I bought. One is this one, and then I also got Supply Lines of the American Revolution, which is supposed to be good. The thing that kind of intrigued me about this game is it's supposed to like recreate politics in the Roman Senate. And I have a chance to read the rule book. I got to just to really get what's going on. I got to get the pieces like on the board and move them around a bit to figure out exactly what's going on with it. But it kind of feels like almost the Roman Senate as imagined through an abstract game. So you have like all your like senators, you're trying to influence different regions, and you can like flip them to your side or the other side, and by using different abilities, flip adjacent ones if you got a really popular one. And so your goal is basically to either, depending on which side you play, your goal is to accumulate enough victory points by basically swaying policy your way. So one player plays like I got to open it, Optimates party, which is basically like, the old rich conservative party of Rome. And then you have the Popularis, which is the party of like, the commoners and all that kind of thing. And I did read it, and based on the fact podcasts about, the Roman Senate and history, it does seem to mimic it pretty well. Like they have all the offices. You can like council and pro-council and all that kind of stuff.
But Andy, can you, as you can in time of crisis, can you do that one thing where you totally erase the previous emperor, the previous, people from history, totally erase them, like etch their face off of carvings and all that?
Now, you can't, they do have a term that's basically you assassinating a senator and putting one in their place. So if you pay enough money, you can basically like instantaneously flip a blue senator over to a red one. And that basically is the implication of that is you killed the last one, and the new one, you're like, yeah, you're going to play ball now, right? So, but yeah, no, it does look really interesting. Worth noting, it is from a war game company. So component quality could be a little freaky outy for some people, because it was about $9 on sale when I got it. It's like 2 paper sheets, a half sheet of counters, and like an 8-sided dice.
Andy, this is just like, a few acres was, or not a few acres. In Infamous Traffic was like $55 for some, some dice, counters, and a paper map, right?
Yeah, I'll probably like try to like make my own mounted board on this one again too, just because I like to do those things. But anyway, like mechanically, it looks really neat. Like having got this and Supply Lines, I can kind of see Tom Russell, who's also the head of Hollenspiel. It seems to be he likes to make games where there's kind of a pivot point where they'll be really unforgiving, and it almost feels like a chess match, and you're just waiting for that opportunity to just cause the opponent to come crashing down. So this kind of feels like that too. It's like I got to move a senator. senator here. I got to change some there, because basically every time you take an action, you a certain medical will. But a lot of the actions like cede political will to your opponent. So it's like, okay, I can flip all these senators here, but crap, that's going to give him political will to like come back and flip half of them back to his side. Crap, is that really worth it? So yeah, but it plays in something like 60 to 90 minutes too, which is pretty short for, games by a war game company. And it looks really different and really unique. And the board is like that kind of ugly that's like so ugly it's almost pretty again.
Andy, are you talking about this board? Is this the one that was like printed on graph paper?
Yeah.
Oh man, Andy has been sharing pictures of this, and it's like the entire thing is just graph paper. It's not like they've got some graph paper in some areas, just the whole thing. They were just like, yeah, we just save time and make it all graph paper.
Yeah,
and
it's like that ugliest
probably
dog
the most
competition
hideous thing I've ever seen.
It's like the ugliest dog competition. You kind of look at one, you're like, oh, he's so ugly. That's kind of cute.
No, Andy, that's just you that thinks that. Maybe I would think that about dogs, but when it comes to this board, I think it looks hideous, and there's no redeeming qualities about it.
No.
Nothing about the game, nothing against it. It just looks really, really gross.
Yeah. Makes 1830 look like quality production style there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're gonna wish you're gonna like turn to the back of a splatter box. That blank white paper is gonna be like just something to clean your eyes after looking at this board.
Yeah. No, it's definitely interesting, but but gameplay wise, it does look really interesting. I want to give it a shot. And it's a 2-player war game, and so is Supply Line. So,
are you familiar at all with Republic of Rome? That was brought up in the chat as saying it sounds kind of similar to that.
I read just a little bit about that. I don't know. Like, it doesn't go near as long, and I know Republic of Rome has some sort of crazy randomness stuff to it. In this game, the only randomness in this game can be by choice. If you do a certain action, there's a die roll to it, but it's kind of like maybe
sounds
like
a little bit like Twilight Struggle that way.
Right. Yeah. Like you add up all of your potential against their potential, then roll an 8-sided dice, and depending on how it all shakes out, like you could or could not flip somebody.
Sure.
But it's like
it sounds very much like Twilight Struggle that way.
Right. Yeah. So other than that, it's completely non-random. So it's I spend my points, you spend your points, and how's this all going to shake out?
Mm-hmm.
So
cool,
anyway,
dude.
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I sounds based on what you said, sounds like I would give it a shot. I mean, like, of course, Andy, that board, man. For some reason, when I see that board, I just think Andy bought this because of this board. Not Andy tolerates this board. He was attracted to this board.
I can't say that's entirely not true.
Well, that's Andy's hype of yeah.
Yeah.
Popularis.
The Roman Senate game where you make people pay for things and do horrible things to them. That's what I'm gonna call it. So
the Romans. That'll be when Capstone Games makes a English version of it like they did with Haskell Connect.
Yeah.
They're gonna call it, that, and then that's gonna be the caption what Andy just said.
No, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure if you showed as much of a component snob as Clay is, I'm pretty sure if you showed him this board, like he would burst a blood vessel in his head and drop over dead.
Yeah, no,
but nothing but love. I'm not trying to kill you, Clay.
Yeah, apparently the size of the board is specifically restricted because of the designer's kitchen table. Got that from Tony in the chat.
Oh yeah, no,
so.
that's all his games. That's why Infamous Traffic had such a small board too.
Wow.
So anyway, it looks
Crazy,
cool.
man.
I'm looking forward to checking out more games by Hollenspiel because they're like all strange. I'll hype another one next week, so it'll be cool. That one's like really out there, but we'll save that for the next episode.
Sounds good. Well, I'm going to be hyping something that I've already alluded to, which is the expansion to Spirit Island. It is called Branch and Claw. It is going to add 2 new spirits to the game. It was mentioned in our comments that maybe this game would start feeling a little bit samey after a while, and I think that some of the elements that are going to be added in this expansion are going to help maybe make that feel quite different. You've got different tokens that are now being able to be manipulated and moved around the board, and really what this can kind of do is make the game marginally easier, but then what this kind of allows you to do is crank up the difficulty. As I said, I've only played this on difficulty 0, and this goes up to like difficulty level 13, depending on the scenario that you choose and the adversary that you choose. There's also a thematic board that's not been balanced to be equidistant from different territories, and thus it is much more difficult to have maneuverability, especially at the start of the game. Anyway, with all this stuff thrown in, it can kind of make the game a little bit easier for the spirits to manage, and thus you're encouraged then to try to crank up that difficulty level by adding in an adversary. I never even talked about adversaries. There are 3 different adversaries just in the base game, and then they have 7 total levels of difficulty because they start with 1 special ability that makes the game harder. You can then add up to 6 more of them, which are, yes, they all continue to accrue. All of these abilities stack. And so you end up with a theme that is specifically tied to a European nation's colonization strategy. For example, Brandenburg, Prussia tends to make the game almost like a blitzkrieg war, where normally you have a deck that controls enemy movement and it's got 12 cards in it. Here, you're already adding some of the higher more difficult cards into the base game or into the first stage of the game, and then you're actually removing cards that would then be easier. So you're going to go from like 12 cards to down to I think like 7 or 8 cards is how much it can get to in the hardest version of Brandenburg Prussia. There are other abilities that also come into play. This is all just base game stuff, and I'm actually not even hyping the base game. The expansion is going to add, like I said, 2 more spirits, which do require you to play with these tokens that allow you to prevent the enemy from advancing in its different ways that it advances, by either building, exploring, ravaging. It'll prevent those things. You also have these wild beasts that are kind of like your friends, almost like another sort of manipulatable resource that sits on the board, kind of like the indigenous people called the Day Hand. In addition to that, you've got almost double the amount of cards that can be added to your base starting hand. You've got double the amount of major powers and minor powers. These are 2 different things there. You've got a new adversary, the Kingdom of France, which sets up plantations, which are different and specifically rushes out, I believe it's the 2nd level of the invaders. And if you ever run out of the supply, which you have a specific amount, then they're going to end. So, I mean, you've got a different dynamic when you're playing with them as you do with the other 3 adversaries. You also add quite a bit of scenarios to this game. So your scenarios are going to be things that make you like maybe play the game twice, kind of almost like a legacy version. That's one of the scenarios. There's a few other ones included in this box. One of the main things that really ratchets up in content is the Blighted Island effects. I never even talked about this because there's just so much in Spirit Island, and I wasn't going to be exhaustive, like I said. But the Blighted Island is something where you start out with the island healthy, and then once you lose a certain amount of blight to the board from this card, then you're going to flip that card. That tells you how much more blight you have left before you lose the game, and it also is going to either add a negative effect, which in the base game there's only 2 different negative effects that were very, very close to one another. So there really wasn't much interesting necessarily going on with these Blighted Island cards because they were just so similar. However, in the expansion, you've got Blighted Island cards that will actually give you special abilities, meaning making you better at the game, but the amount of blight that gets put on that card is like minimal. As in, like, if you aren't incredibly powerful and be able to immediately manage the blight spreading across the board, you're going to instantly lose. And that one is like called Backs Against the Wall. I mean, it's got some really cool stuff going on. So the amount of those Blighted Islands goes from 2 in the base game to 9 total after the expansion. So, I mean, when you shuffle those at the beginning, you're only going to choose 1, and that's really going to change the dynamic of how that game is going to flip as you hit that threshold of the island becoming blighted. So that's one of the cool things that really ratchets up in content. Everything else, though, you've got everything I would look for in a small box expansion and just a bunch of content at that. And I'm going to be reviewing Spirit Island again, not only so I can talk about the game more, but actually answer that question as to whether or not the game starts to feel samey after so many plays. 10 plays in, I would say no. But I've also never even tried so much of the content, and I really would want this content to make meaningful changes to the game for me to feel like it's not getting samey and for me to really feel justified in continuing to play. There's quite a bit promised, and there's going to be quite a bit to live up to. That's why I'm hyping Spirit Island Branch and Claw. And that is this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Andy, wait a minute. In the chat, you just mentioned something about getting 7 Oaks. 7 Oaks is like...
Yeah.
Is here in Boone, Iowa, I'm pretty sure that 7 Oaks is what we call like a ski slope that's like located here in Boone, Iowa, of all places. Is there a game coming out called 7 Oaks?
I think it is. I think it's already out.
I think you may have accidentally called it 7 Oaks because 7 Oaks is a ski slope that then offers like float trips and canoe trips in the summer, which we've done on my birthday before. Are you sure, Andy?
I don't know. I'm tired enough. It could be something. Could be. Oh, no. There was. No, I crunched the names together. It was a war game that Hollandspiel's putting out called 7 Pines or Fair Oaks. So apparently I just cut out 2 words.
But 7 Oaks is actually what we call this place here in Boone, our ski slope. Like one of the world's smallest ski slopes, I think. You know, smallest profitable enterprises that's a ski slope in the world, I would say, personally.
Yeah, I could see me screwing that up because we've taken kids there on a class trip. So
yeah. Oh, it's little. It's little.
What's really hilarious is to watch your students like roll down the hill when they trip, thinking they could avoid the bunny slope.
And this is why Andy teaches middle school. You know, he said that earlier, like the battle crib. That would be like what my parents, you know, you guys have made up this theoretical childhood that I've had where I was abused by dice, and that would have been in the battle crib. And apparently now Andy likes to watch his students injure themselves on skis.
Just certain ones.
Jeez, Andy. I might have kids that are listening to this. I might have kids that watch this in the future. And you know what? I want you to know, be safe out there on the slopes. All right.
Nah, you don't need
That's enough.
You don't need bunny slope training. Go for the hard one.
Everybody's got to start somewhere, man. And the bunny slopes here are pretty easy, but gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, guys, that's enough for this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. I'm your host, Joe Sallin. I've been joined by the man who gave you a rundown of everything, Gen Con.
Trent Ham.
He is still there. Okay, great. As well as
Andrew Dennison,
who apparently loves watching his kids suffer pain. I feel bad for each and every one of you out there. And once again, I'm Joe Sallin, the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Hope you have a great week of gaming, and catch us next week on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Night, guys.